Hey guys, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I thought I would talk to you a bit and walk you through stand development. Now, standard development is a great alternative way to process your black and white films. If you're already doing your black and white chemistry at home, this video is for you, but if you haven't actually given that a go yet, I do recommend looking at a previous video I've done where I go through that. If you are doing it at home, stay tuned. What I'm going to do today is develop these three rolls of black and white film. Talk about some of the disadvantages and advantages, or I should probably sell it better saying advantages and disadvantages of using stand development as a process. And at the end, I'll show some pictures and see if they exhibit any of the telltale characteristics. Let's run through some of the advantages first. Big one, you can mix and match the ISOs or film speeds of the films you develop together. In this tank, I've got a roll of HP5, which is the one with the labeling, because the other two are Delta 400 and HP5 that I rolled myself using a bulk loader. I just use these, they're the 100-foot rolls, so it is all Ilford film and it is all 400 speed, but one of these, and I don't know which one, was pushed to 800 because the light was fading in the evening. So I don't know which one it is, but I am confident that with stand development, I will get usable images from all three of these rolls. Now, for some of the advantages of stand development. Stand development is a compensating development process, which means that if your shots are a little bit over or underexposed, the process itself will actually balance the images. You do lose a little bit of contrast, but what happens is, as the chemistry processes and develops the film, it exhausts itself in the highlights before the shadows, which means that even after your highlights have stopped developing, the shadows can continue to catch up. Now, it does reduce a bit of the contrast in your image, but it does give you a much more detailed negative than you'd otherwise get. And you can always add contrast in post, so it's great for those shots where you don't really know if you've got it or if you're changing your ISO mid-roll or that kind of thing where you really want to be confident. You hear the stories of people finding black and white film in cameras from World War I, and they develop the pictures and they find that they're all pictures of people's feet or blurry pictures of the floor. No, sometimes they're good and they do stand development for all of that. Another benefit is that you get a slight increase in sharpness, and that's due to the edge effect. If you think about unsharp masking or basically any sharpening effect you apply in post, what it's doing is it's increasing the contrast between the gaps between different colors. So if you think about stand development as sort of tracing around the edge of everything in your image, yeah, it does give a bit of an increase, and to be honest, I don't really see it, but people do. The next advantage is that it's pretty easy to do. It's super lazy. With most black and white processing, you're sat agitating your tank or overwatching it, sort of making sure that it's not sat for too long. It's a whole process. I mean, I'm sure you're used to it if you're watching this, but I get tired of it sometimes. So a big plus for stand development is that you can whack all of these into a tank, pour your chemistry in, agitate once or twice, and then leave it for 40 minutes at a time. So that's great if you're doing something else. For example, if you have multiple developing tanks, you can be stand developing at one end of the sink and then doing a color process at the other end of the sink. It's great if you've been traveling, you come back and you've got a ton of film and you just want to chuck as much black and white as you can in the tank and just put it to one side whilst you work on other stuff. Get rid of this Delta box. Now, I am doing two 400s and an 800 speed, but this works great on lower speed films as well. I've used it with 100 speed Acros and also Kodak films, Tri-X, T-Max. People say it works better on classic grain film, which means maybe avoid Delta or T-Max, but I'm about to use it on Delta today, and you can make up for yourself if you think it looks good or not. Now, let's go on to the disadvantages. The one risk of stand development is an unfortunate process called bromide drag. Now, what this results in is streaks down your negatives that kind of resemble the sprocket holes. If you do it on large format or medium format negatives, instead of sprocket holes, you'll get different densities in the sky. So for that reason, today I'm going to be showing you something called semi-stand. That basically means that during my 1 hour and 20 minute process, I'll actually do one inversion at the 40-minute mark, and that's just to clear up any of the other chemistry effects going on inside the tank whilst it's going through. Purists will say this isn't stand development, but trust me, this does work and you're going to be able to see the results anyway. Let's cut to me loading some film and mixing some chemicals, and I'll show you what it's all about. Okay, so obviously you're going to need a daylight developing tank and a way of loading it in complete darkness. It's also useful to have film spools. Next up, we've got our developer. Today I'm going to be using Adox Rodinal. This is pretty classic stuff, a lot of people have it. Got some stop bath as well. Yeah, that's Tatnall Indeset. Nothing special going on there. You're also going to need some fix. Here we go, I've got this big 5-litre bottle of Ilford Hypam. Last but not least, you're going to want to have measuring jugs, and I've got this smaller measuring jug that means I can accurately do finer dilutions down to about 10 millilitres. Okay, now that we've got all the kit ready and the tank loaded, it's time for some chemistry. I'm going to start off by measuring 10 millilitres of Rodinal into the small measuring jug. Now, it looks like a tiny amount, but this is all the chemistry we're using. I'm mixing it into a litre of tap water. Now, you see that I'm stirring it with a thermometer. It doesn't actually matter what temperature it is, as long as it's within, I'd say 5 degrees of 20 Celsius. I'm just using it here as a chemical stirrer. So that's all ready to go. Now I'm going to pour this into the tank, and my first cycle of development is going to be 40 minutes standing. So as you can see, I'm literally just going to pour that in. Slowest pouring ever, but excuse that. And put my lid on, otherwise it's going to end up all over the countertop. And you'll see I am going to do 3 quick agitations at the start, and that's it for the first 40 minutes. So 1, 2, 3, and you'll notice that I tap it quite firmly on the side of the sink, just so that there's no air bubbles lodged in the film. That's it. I'm not going to make you sit here for 40 minutes, so let's cut to the end of this. Okay, so this is where the semi-stand thing comes in. Now, it's just sat for 40 minutes, but at this halfway point, what I'm going to do is just 2 quick inversions, and that's to eliminate the bromide drag that I might have seen in the negatives otherwise. So I've done that, and I'm just going to put another 40-minute timer on and let it stand for the rest of its development. Okay, my 40 minutes is up, and as you can see, it's been so long that the sun has set and I'm using artificial lights. The rest of the process is exactly the same as your usual black and white, so again, do refer to the previous video if you're not comfortable with this. The only difference is that you can optionally skip the stop stage. The dilution is so fine that you'll actually find that most of your developers exhausted, but I still use stop just for good luck, just a bit of peace of mind. Now, the fixing and rinsing is hardly the most gripping video content, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to skip to just a quick look at some of the pictures I got, and let's have a look at the contrast, detail, and whether it looks worth doing from my negatives. I really hope I got something interesting and worth sharing. So one of the rolls I shot at Thruxton Racetrack in southwest England, and this image of the tyre of one of the cars is a good way to show you guys the increased sharpness and detail. Now I'll just zoom in quickly so you can have a closer look. Obviously it's open for debate whether the lens or the development gives it this sharpness and detail, but I was using a pretty sharp lens. This does look pretty good to my eyes. I'm not sure how much YouTube will compress it for you. It's enough detail for me, I'm pretty happy with it. This next shot is really to illustrate the large dynamic range that stand development gives you. If you look at this picture, you can see that there's detail in the roof of the stands, but also in the bright sky. Now it was pretty overcast that day, so it wasn't like the shadows were too strong, but it really gives a full tonal range. and you can see the effect if I apply more contrast to it in post. You can still get that contrasty image if you need it, it's just that the detail's there. Lastly, I've got this picture of my girlfriend, and I took this indoors in quite a dim restaurant. The lens I used was at its widest aperture, f2.8, so I'm guessing that this was probably around a 60th of a second, maybe a 30th. I was feeling lucky handheld. Now, I'm pretty amazed that there's an image on this piece of negative. You can fall into that trap of thinking I need a 1.4 aperture lens or a Noctilux or whatever to shoot indoors, but actually using a 2.8, which is comparatively slow for a prime lens, I've managed to get this picture, and I give all the credit to stand development. This was on the same roll as the racetrack pictures, so you can see that daylight to evening just seamlessly transitions, and I think that's one of the best things about it. I will admit that this picture is a little bit grainy, but I guess that's the price you pay for 1600 speed film. That about wraps up the video then. I hope that you've learned how to do it. If you've got any questions, drop a comment. I'll try and respond to those as quickly as I can. And yeah, if you haven't given it a go, stand development, it's easy. I wouldn't say it's fun, but it is a good process to know, and I hope you guys get good results with it. Thanks for watching.